Power 98.7 podcast.
Former President Thabo Mbeki with me here on Power Perspective, and you can talk to us. We are at 011-014-9200. Tweet us at PowerFM987 or at Tim Modise, and send us emails to powerperspective@powerfm.co.za. As you sit here, Mr. Thabo Mbeki, and you reflect back on your time as Deputy President of the country, do you have any regrets? Are there things that you wish you did differently that you could not do then?
Well, that's a very difficult question, Tim, to answer, because when you sit as Deputy President or President, you have a responsibility which covers all elements of government, and therefore it means all elements of national life. When you get into a cabinet meeting, and you've got a whole range of things that need to be discussed. As president who's chairing the cabinet, you need to be familiar with what government is saying about education, and what the state of education is in the country, what government is saying about the economy, and then what government is saying about labor, what the government is saying about foreign affairs, what government is saying about everything. So to answer your question about what is it that could have been done, which was not done correctly, or sufficiently, or whatever, one would have to go through all of that. But I think that in the end, the challenge that we faced then and continue to face now, is to achieve actual practical results with regard to the eradication of the legacy of colonialism and apartheid, which means many things. You can talk about education or land affairs or whatever. What one regrets is that we didn't achieve faster progress with regard to all of the objectives that we set ourselves. The issue, for instance, that you were raising earlier, of the reduction of the level of unemployment. This has been part of government policy for a long time. I'm saying what one regrets about that is that we did not achieve the successes that were obviously necessary with regard to this. We can discuss the question as to why. And there will be many, I'm sure, many regrets of this kind. That you needed the economy of South Africa to grow at particular high rates of growth, which we never achieved. And the reason we didn't achieve them is because we did not have the required necessary levels of investment into the economy. Now, the investors were not investing in the South African economy at the rate and extent which was necessary. Why? Government can't instruct them. You can't instruct an investor to invest. You could create the conditions for this. The state itself would intervene to invest, as the state did and does. But I'm saying you would regret the fact that we did not succeed to attract these levels of investment that were necessary. So there would be many regrets of this kind, but I'm saying at the center of them is that we did not move sufficiently, fast enough and sufficiently with regard to addressing this matter of the eradication of this legacy.
I'd like to take a few calls. I'll take them one after the other and then bunch them together, and you can respond to the questions. We've got a few people who've been holding for quite a while here. Busiso, you're in Randburg. Welcome.
Hi, Tim.
Yeah, welcome, Mbeki.
Hi. I'd like to wish the former president a happy belated birthday, and also reiterate what other callers have already said in terms of the work that he's doing on the continent. I think it's quite commendable. My question is with regard to the issue of South Africa 20 years on after us acquiring freedom. At the conclusion of the agreement between North and South Sudan, the president went on to say that freedom has three elements, being peace, reconciliation, and justice. I'd like the president to address each of those elements in the context of South Africa, 19 years on from us acquiring freedom, and in doing so, address the gaps where there are gaps and tell us what the reasons are for those gaps and why they persist.
All right, thanks very much. We've got that, Busiso. And we go to, is it Butsi Kalami? Butsi?
Hi there.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. You're speaking to Botsi. I'm calling you from Kalani. And first of all, happy belated birthday to the former president. I'm sitting with a group of friends, and what we want to know is what role can the youth play that firmly believed in the African Renaissance? We're seeing an institutional void with the likes of NEPA being almost silent and quiet in the new and incumbent government. Does the former president have anything to add there?
All right, we got that. Thanks very much, Butsi. And then Kaya Parkhurst.
Hello.
Welcome, Kaya.
Hi. I think my question has been partly asked.
Yes.
I'm going to ask a specific question.
Go for it.
Chief. I think I understood the president's message about HIV/AIDS, but in hindsight, how would the president have actually changed the messaging around HIV/AIDS, or he believes that the messaging was correct? Because I just believe that there was a lot of misunderstandings. So if you were to be given an opportunity to actually rechannel what government was trying to say about HIV/AIDS, what would we say differently, if at all?
Yeah. Thanks very much, Kaya, for those for your question. We've got a question from Sibusiso, from Butsi, and from Kaya. Mr. Mbeki.
Well, maybe to start with the last question. No, so what we were trying to say is that indeed, as the scientists are saying, AIDS, the acronym AIDS means acquired immune deficiency syndrome. So central to this challenge is immune deficiency. So what we're then saying is, what is it that we should do as a country to address that issue of immune deficiency among our people, as a result of which you then get AIDS. And that immune deficiency would be caused, there would be many things that would cause it. One of them would be malnutrition. It's in the medical literature. Malnutrition, persistent malnutrition, will cause immune deficiency. Untreated repeated attacks of tropical diseases will cause immune deficiency. HIV will be one of the causes of that immune deficiency. So the question we're asking is, what interventions then need to be made to ensure that we address this particular issue of immune deficiency, which comes from many causes, so that indeed we are then able to impact properly on the matter of the improvement of the health of our people faced with this challenge of AIDS. And really, that's all. And you'll find that in current contemporary literature, everybody has now accepted this, that issues like malnutrition are fundamental to the correct response to this issue of AIDS. That's what we're saying. It's true that, there was a lot of big campaign about we're denying causality between HIV and AIDS and so on. But that's not the issue that we were discussing. The issue we're discussing is, here we are as a country facing this serious problem. What is it that we need to do to respond to it effectively? And you can't respond to it effectively on the basis of propaganda and all that. You needed to make the right interventions. I'm saying at the center, must be. At the center of the interventions you've got to make, you've got to address this matter. What is it that causes the immune deficiency which results in AIDS? I'm saying you'll find this in the medical literature about this, that I don't think there's any serious medical scientist who would say the only thing that causes acquired immune deficiency is HIV. I don't think you'd find any such person. But that's maybe what the caller said is correct. Perhaps we could have presented this matter in a different way in order to ensure that we don't get the kind of response that we did get. But I'm addressing the substance of what the government was what I was trying to argue with regard to this issue. Now, with regard to these matters that were raised about peace, justice, and all that, Tim, is what I was saying earlier. It's clear that there's a continuing struggle in our country. To achieve national reconciliation, to achieve general welfare of all of our population. It's a challenge that's going to take us time. And clearly, certainly during the years that I was in government, we did not achieve the results that we wanted to achieve with regard to all of these things. So whether you talk about peace and justice and all this is we are running a marathon. It's not a sprint. And I think we need to understand that. If you look at the South Africa we inherit in 1994, is a South Africa that had been constructed in a period of over 350 years. And that construct of 350 years is very, very deeply entrenched in South African society. We've got to correct it, got to change it, got to produce this kind of South Africa as is described in our constitution, but it's going to take time.
Now, I want to change focus a little bit and talk about you as a person. What drives you? I mean, what motivates you? For instance, earlier when we started the conversation, we spoke about the passion and the approach that you took upon the adoption of the Constitution then when you presented that inspired I'm an African speech. But generally speaking, I mean, to be an activist at such a young age, to be part of the exiled ANC, come back, participate in negotiations and have those secretive meetings that had to be kept confidential in the lead up to 1990, then be part of government and then go out of government, then go around the continent, then try to promote the African, then have declared 21st century. Tell me a little bit more about where you're coming from.
Well, Tim, I come from South Africa. No, you see, I think we are very fortunate, some of us. We're very fortunate in terms of our upbringing. I mean, I was born into a political family and grew up all the time, surrounded by relatives and families that were political. And what they were political about was there are many things that are wrong in our country which need to be corrected. And each one of us has a responsibility to contribute what she can to ensure that these things are corrected. Not for personal benefit, but because it's the right thing to do. So that's how we grew up. My mother was one of the first people to be listed, which means banned at the time, after the approval of the Suppression of Communism Act in 1950. Because she had been an activist. So they banned her, so listed, so she could not be quoted, and this and that and the other. But that's my mother. So naturally, therefore, what she will say to us as young people, as her children, is that, look, I mean, the reason I got involved, never mind your father, me, the reason I got involved in all the struggle is because it had the wrong things here. And we must do something to change them. And she's never ever asked that anybody should acclaim her as a leader or whatever. And so that's how we grew up. So I'm saying, Tim, in a sense, I'm saying we're fortunate in that we were inducted.
Would you say that you regard her, amongst other people, as one of the influential people in your life who helped shape the way you see the world and you relate to the world?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, she, you know, when all of us at home, the children, there were 4 of us, we didn't grow up at home. At an early age, we had to leave to go and stay with relatives and so on. The reason for that was that both my father and mother, this is before the treason trial of 1955, they knew that these arrests were going to come. And they expected that either one or both of them might be arrested. So we would be faced with a situation when there would be no parents because they would be in jail. So they decided that therefore the children must learn to grow up without the parents. That's why we were farmed out from a very early age to relatives and so on. So we grew up like that. To make the point that you see you can't demand that you must have a normal family life in a situation in which the situation in the country is abnormal. So that you children must know that tomorrow your parents will disappear, go to jail. You can't complain about that.
Right. Now, I know this, but many other people who know you say you are a well-read man and an intellectual and a man of books and so forth, right? I wonder what you're reading at the moment.
I'm reading a book. I'm reading a number of books. One of them is entitled Dancing in the Glory of Monsters. It's about the conflicts in the Congo, in the DRC, particularly the war in the DRC, which involved a number of countries, Zimbabwe, Namibia, Angola, Rwanda, Uganda, and so on. Makes very painful reading. When you see the destruction that was caused, the number of Africans that died in the course of that conflict. That's one of the books. The other book I'm reading is written by 2 Americans who are arguing, the people who worked in the State Department of the United States, who are arguing that the U.S. governments have not dealt with Iran properly. They've developed a wrong stereotype of the Iranians, as a consequence of which you get wrong policies. And therefore that it's absolutely important for the American governments and establishment properly to understand Iran, so that they can then intervene and interact with Iran properly. So, the third book I'm reading is about the war in Sri Lanka. between the government and the Tamil Tigers, which also is...
So obviously, the current affairs, political type issues, especially the ones that don't make it to the news, because we live on what is this now? The microsecond sound bites, and believe that gives us a total picture of reasons for why things are the way they are. But any particular individuals that have inspired you as an individual yourself? You inspire a lot of people, after all, but there might be some historical figures that you think about for your own inspiration.
Well, Tim, I think we need also to say to the people who called from Kailich, who asked about the role of the youth. Again, I'd like to say to them that if they could live with this radio station here, Power FM, their details I'll come back to them to say, so I can engage about what the role of the youth.
I'll also give them the address of the
Sure.
foundation.
Sure.
Yeah.
So that we can discuss this matter about the role of the youth and so on. But with regard to the matter that you are raising, when we grew up, we were faced with, there was a concrete problem of apartheid. Even as children and at school, you couldn't avoid it. There's apartheid, and something must be done about it. And so our heroes and heroines were the people who were trying to do something about this. Albert Luthuli, Lillian Goy, Bram Fisher. We knew all these names when we were Yusuf Dandu, when we were children at school. And these are the people who were communicating the message to us about what is it that we need to do. What should we be? Bram Fisher, you remember Bram Fisher got arrested here and charged. And then he was retained, I think, by Anglo-American while he was in prison to defend some commercial case in the British courts. So they released him from jail to go to England to defend this case. We met him, Bram. And he said to me that, the Rivonia trialists have decided not to appeal against any sentence. Even if they are sentenced to death, they won't appeal.
And that included your father?
Yes, that's right. So, and he said, I tried. Bram said, look, I tried very hard to persuade them that it's not correct. They have to appeal. But they said no. And the argument they presented, he told me, was that if we appeal, if the court sentences us to death, we are confident that our people, the South African people, will take to the streets and do everything else to make sure that that sentence is not carried out. If we appeal, we'll demobilize them. And therefore we're living our lives in the hands of the same government that we're opposing. They will then take a decision. The thing must go on appeal. It's their courts.
And they can change their minds if they want.
And they can do whatever.
Yep.
By which time, but when they say sentence confirmed, the people have become demobilized. So let us rely on the people. If the people fail, we are ready to die. So Bram told me this thing in London. And he said to me, you young people need to bear in mind the positions that these leaders are taking. Their readiness to sacrifice, as they are saying, readiness to die. And therefore they may very well be hanged. This was before sentence was given. They may very well be hanged. If they are hanged, you too must be able to say, who are ready to die. It's Bram. So I said to him, well, advocate, thanks. Now, those are the kind of people who...
That made a great impression on you.
Absolutely.
As we conclude our chat this evening, and I'm sure there's a moral to that story, how should young people today, South Africans in general, but young people in particular, how should we deal with our lives today as we face a whole number of challenges? But of course, there's a lot to celebrate at the same time. What would you say our approach and attitude should be?
Well, Tim, I really I think it's always important to understand properly what we're dealing with. I think a particular challenge that the youth must face in this country is actually to understand South African reality. What is this animal? When you say South Africa, in its politics, in its economics, in its religion, in its culture, in its whatever. I mean, you have, for instance, a phenomenon which is troubling me greatly, a resurgence of tribalism in our politics. Where does this thing come from? Where is it going to lead us? But you can say it, at least I can. So I'm saying that our young people, I think, need to understand the South African reality in the first place. Because I think that's what will inform the agenda they must address. You have a problem of drugs. From everything I hear, there's a serious problem of drugs. And it will affect particularly young people. What do we do? They must understand that, first of all, that there is such a problem. In order to answer the question, what do we do? We have been, as a foundation, as Thabo Mbeki Foundation, we've been having we just had a weekend workshop with school learners during the June 16 weekend from a whole variety of schools around the country. And these young people, 15, 16-year-olds, one of the issues they are raising is there is a denial of their identity as Africans. And what is coming across to them at school is that Africans are always victims. Africans were victims of slavery, victims of colonialism, victims of apartheid, victims of... So they are asking the question, but was there never any time when we as Africans were not victims? And they are saying it's important to answer that question because we as young people, I'm saying 15, 16-year-olds, can see that there's some things that are going wrong in our country. And we want to do something to help to change them. But you disempower us when you say the African is always a victim, which means the African is never an agent of change. What do we do? What I'm saying, Tim, in the end, I think it's very important for our young people, and for you and me, who are not as young as they are.
I'm not Mr. Mbeki's age. I'm just saying this for the benefit of the listeners.
Really, to try and understand, to understand South African reality and African reality, in order to be able to define the agenda. What then do we as young people do to respond to these challenges? The fundamental must be really a very good understanding of our reality.
One final question. It's not even a question, a request to you. A request to you. This radio station is only 3 days old. Very much young. It's one of the it's part of the youth that you're talking about in the car. It's still a baby.
It's an infant.
It's an infant, literally. But still, it does take a message when a message is passed on to it. So your message to Power FM. And what do you make of this new station?
Well, with Tim, I would naturally wish the station success. This young infant, I wish it success. I can't, of course, as you would know, I can't promote any particular station. Must promote all stations. But obviously, there is an important challenge which I think we face as a country, which is the education of our people. So I would hope that Power FM would take the trouble to understand not our reality, the African reality, not necessarily to be informed by newspaper headlines, but to go beyond the headlines, to say what actually is the truth. It would be good if in future you would have people saying, if you want to know the real truth about any issue, switch on to Power FM. It's a particular responsibility of all journalists, not to be sensitive, extremely sensitive to their responsibility correctly to inform, without inciting their opinions and all that, but to ensure that we, as the radio listeners or newspaper readers and so on, are able then to make judgments and take action on the basis of real, true, comprehensive, necessary information. If Power can do that, it would have done a great service.
Much appreciated, Mr. Thabo Mbeki, for having been my guest, and I was looking forward to this. Happy belated birthday one more time, and thanks again. I hope it wasn't too much of a hassle for you to spend this extended time with me.
And thanks Tim for that birthday message, and thanks to everybody else who has called, who wished me a happy birthday.
And of course,
thanks
there were too many other people that were calling, and I must apologize that we were not able to accommodate them. Much appreciated.
Power 98.7. Now we're talking.